They promised to patch up the old rules, but came back with a whole new country. Summer of 1787 in Philadelphia. Whispers behind shuttered windows, backroom deals, and decisions that defied common sense. What we often celebrate as a perfect masterpiece was actually born out of conflict, fear, and clever tricks. Here's how America's most sacred document really came to life. So let's dive deep into the darkest stories behind the creation of the U.S. Constitution. Number 1. From Repair to Revolution. The Constitutional Convention was called with one modest purpose: to revise and amend the Articles of Confederation. But within weeks, it was clear the old system was beyond saving. Debt, inflation, and Shays' Rebellion in Massachusetts made the Confederation look fragile and doomed. Instead of patching holes, delegates decided to rebuild from scratch. Even more daring, they changed the rules of the game. Under the Articles, any amendment required the unanimous consent of all 13 states. The delegates boldly declared that the new Constitution would go into effect once 9 states ratified it, and not through state legislatures, but through special state conventions. This was a legal coup, a step around existing law. Some hailed it as an act of courage, others as an overreach. America, in effect, began with a quiet revolution carried out behind closed doors. Number 2. A vow of silence and hidden records. Inside Philadelphia's State House, the atmosphere was closer to a secret society than a democratic assembly. Windows were shut, curtains drawn, and guards kept the curious away. Delegates swore an oath of secrecy. The public knew almost nothing of what was being debated. Even letters home spoke in riddles. The Constitution was ratified without Americans knowing what compromises or arguments shaped it. The official journal wasn't published until 1819, and James Madison's detailed notes, the richest source we have, were released only in 1840, after his death. That means Americans lived under the Constitution for more than 50 years without knowing how it was written. Later, readers were shocked. In those secret debates, men had openly discussed slavery, lifetime power, and even monarchy. Secrecy gave the framers freedom, but robbed the people of transparency. Doesn't that sound uncomfortably familiar today? Number 3. Hamilton's dream of a lifetime president. On June 18, 1787, Alexander Hamilton, brilliant, ambitious, and often controversial, unveiled his own plan. It called for a government modeled almost entirely on Britain's. A president would be chosen for life, serving as long as he behaved with good conduct. Senators, too, would serve for life. The power of the states would be minimal. For a republic that had just overthrown King George III, it sounded like heresy. Fellow delegates dismissed the scheme as extreme, but Hamilton argued passionately that only a strong central government could keep order and earn respect abroad. His plan went nowhere, but the shadow lingered. Opponents branded him a monarchist for years. Historians still argue, was Hamilton dead serious, or was it a bargaining tactic to make the final compromise seem more moderate? Either way, America came close to having something that looked very much like an elected king. Number 4. Slavery without saying slavery. You won't find the word slavery in the Constitution of 1787, but its presence is everywhere in disguise. 3 key provisions secured slavery's grip. First, the infamous 3/5 compromise. Enslaved people would be counted as 3/5 of a person for representation in Congress and the Electoral College, giving the South enormous extra power. Second, the Fugitive Slave Clause. Any person held to service escaping to another state had to be returned to their master. Third, Congress was forbidden to ban the transatlantic slave trade until 1808, 20 more years of sanctioned human trafficking. All of it wrapped in careful euphemisms like other persons. Benjamin Franklin himself admitted at the end that the Constitution bore the prejudices and passions of its authors. Those hidden shadows later exploded into the Civil War. Number 5. A Constitution with no rights. Here's the paradox. The original Constitution had no Bill of Rights, no guarantee of free speech, no freedom of the press, no right to a jury trial. George Mason of Virginia, who had drafted his state's Declaration of Rights in 1776, refused to sign, declaring he'd rather cut off his right hand. Elbridge Gerry and Edmund Randolph also refused. Anti-Federalists across the states seized on this omission. How could Americans trust a powerful new government without protections? The Constitution might have collapsed in ratification battles if Federalists hadn't promised to fix it. The promise worked. By 1791, 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, were ratified. Ironically, what began as the Constitution's greatest flaw produced the freedoms Americans treasure most today. Number 6. Pennsylvania's forced quorum. In Pennsylvania, ratification almost stalled when anti-Federalist lawmakers refused to show up, blocking a quorum. The solution? 2 of them were literally dragged from a tavern and hauled into the chamber by order of the sergeant-at-arms. It was technically legal, but looked more like farce than democracy. Still, that rough scene ensured Pennsylvania became one of the first states to ratify the Constitution. Number 7. We, the people, 3 words that changed everything. Early drafts of the preamble were dull and bureaucratic. We, the people of New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and so on. Then Gouverneur Morris, gifted stylist and member of the Committee of Style, rewrote it as the thunderous, "We, the people of the United States." In one stroke, sovereignty shifted. No longer a league of states, but a single nation created by the people. Anti-Federalists scoffed. "Who authorized you to speak for all the people?" But the words stuck, and they became the most famous in American political language. To this day, schoolchildren recite them. The irony is that this grand declaration wasn't the result of epic debate, but the pen of one man with a flair for words. Sometimes history is rewritten by editors. Number 8. Without God. A secular shock. For the 18th century, it was shocking. The Constitution does not invoke God. The only reference is the date line, "in the year of our Lord." Even more radical, Article 6 bans any religious test for public office. In a country where many states still required officials to swear loyalty to a church, this was revolutionary. Pamphlets warned, what if one day the president is a Catholic, or a Muslim, or, horror of horrors, an atheist? The ministers thundered that God would punish a nation that left his name out of its charter. Yet the framers held firm. The United States would be a secular government in a deeply religious society. That tension has shaped America ever since. What was once called godless is now praised as the foundation of religious liberty. Number 9. Rhode Island the Rebel and the Final Feast. Not every state welcomed the new Constitution. Rhode Island flatly refused to send delegates to Philadelphia and later held a referendum. Its people voted overwhelmingly against ratification. For years, Rhode Island was nicknamed Rogue Island. In 1790, facing the threat of economic blockade from Congress, it finally gave in, ratifying by a razor-thin margin. But the story didn't end with politics. In Philadelphia, just before the signing, the delegates gathered for a farewell banquet at the city tavern. The surviving bill tells the tale: over 50 bottles of Madeira, 60 of claret, bowls of rum punch, porter, cider, and whiskey. More than 2 bottles of alcohol per man, plus extra wine for musicians and servants. On September 17, 1787, 2 days later, many of those same men, probably with pounding headaches, signed the Constitution. It had been forged in secrecy, debated in conflict, and toasted with extraordinary abandon.